Breathe, darling.
This is just a chapter,
Not your whole story.
Hey guys, welcome back to Cheers to the Next Chapter. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Katie.
And I'm Brittany.
This week we are going to talk a little bit about boundaries, healthy ways to set boundaries, whether that be in relationships, boundaries with food, physical, personal boundaries, boundaries of social media, just all aspects of life and why they are so important. Katie, do you have anything you can share with us on healthy ways to set our boundaries?
Yes, boundaries. I love boundaries. I feel like I talk about them all day, every day. And it was kind of interesting because I didn't actually first learn about boundaries in school to get my therapist degree, but I learned about them at a Codependent Anonymous meeting. So me and my dad used to go to those, which are kind of like AA meetings. And that was like a really valuable experience. I learned a lot about boundaries, and that's where I first learned about the categories of boundaries that I often use in therapy today. And those categories are physical, which physical boundaries could be like how I teach it to little kids is like your bubble. So like some people's bubbles are way out there, they don't want anybody coming close. And some people's bubbles are like, they don't care, let's hug, let's be all over each other. It's all good. So that's like a physical boundary. And now we've had to be like, we're forced to be 6 feet apart. That might be driving some people crazy. That might be really making some people very happy. So that's a physical boundary. So then there's also emotional boundaries. So emotional boundaries are really making sure that, you're understanding your own emotions, and that others are validating your emotions, or what are you going to let slide when it comes emotionally? What aren't you going to let slide? Yeah, there's probably more on that I could say better, but another one is spiritual boundaries. So spiritual would be, what are things, I would expand that even to more like spiritual, moral value boundaries. What are the things that are like your foundation? What's important to you? And what are you not going to stand for? What are you going to stand for? What are those boundaries when it comes to your morals and values and spiritual aspects of life? And then the other one would be sexual. So I know sexual could also be like physical, but I think it's important to have its own category because it's one that gets violated often as a boundary. And it's one that we really want to encourage young people now to understand what their boundaries are sexually. There's a lot of pressures out there with mainstream media, with, social media, all that stuff. So it's really important to understand your boundaries when it comes to all those things. And the social media one, I like that you said that, Jess, because I've started to add that as kind of like a fifth core boundary, because I think we're really in the infancy stages of understanding, the impact of social media on our lives and how to practice boundaries on there. People are on social media just really being so disrespectful, so rude, so hurtful. And some people are on there being encouraging and supportive and having healthy conversations, So along with those boundaries, physical, emotional, spiritual, sexual, social media, there also needs to come the understanding of which category do your boundaries fit in? Are they, rigid boundaries? Are they too structured, too rigid? You're not, no room to compromise. You're not letting anybody in. They're so rigid, you're just kind of stuck. Or are they fluid boundaries? Is it just anything goes, don't really care. I'm going to let everything slide. I'm going to get walked all over. They're just really too loose. They're really, really too flexible. Or are they healthy boundaries, which is the place that we all strive, to land. And it's lifetime work, to land in that healthy space. So yeah, that's what I know about boundaries. I love boundaries.
Katie, do you think you have your own personal boundaries?
Oh gosh, no, I struggle with boundaries all the time. I can talk about them all day long and about what's healthy and what's not, but yeah, like I said, it really is like a lifelong thing to learn what are my boundaries? You know, I think I know like physical boundaries. That's kind of changed for me over time. My family is not really like a touchy-feely family. We don't give hugs all the time. We've started to more now, but growing up, we weren't really, you know, that touchy-feely. It'd be like hug each other when we leave. That's it. You know, no random hugs or anything. And one of my friends from high school, I remember, she like taught me how to give a good hug. She'd always make fun of me because she'd be like, you don't know how to hug. And then, you know, so I really do think she did help me like kind of like get into a healthier place with the boundary. Before I was like a little bit too rigid. Like I didn't want to let people in or, you know, let them that close to me. So no, yeah, I love boundaries and I know what healthy boundaries are, but they're really hard to have.
They are hard to have. I feel like my boundaries are they're different in every category. Like in some I'm more rigid, and others I'm way more fluid. And then I'm getting much better in other areas where I'm not like fully healthy, but you know, making those steps like to be healthier every day in those areas. Like my boundary with food. It's something that I'm probably gonna have to work at like for the rest of my life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a hard one, especially, you know, because food goes with everything, you know, like it's such like celebrations. I don't ever want to be the person to turn down a celebration because I'm on a diet, you know? Like if I'm at a birthday party, you know what? Eat the cake. Have the champagne toast. Like, you know, but then to have that balance
you have to like know to like enjoy, but not like overindulge.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Having that balance. That's where, you know, it's tough. And then like the emotional side of things. I know like for me during this quarantine has been such a roller coaster with what I've been eating, you know, like I know when I go through like something tough, like a rough patch in the beginning, I might really not be eating. I mean, I'm eating, but not enough, you know, because I'm just down. And then there's like a shift and I just, you know, you binge, which is not healthy. So I'm really working on that, like not doing the emotional eating, or eating when I'm bored, you know?
Yeah.
But I also don't want to be too rigid and feel deprived. It's something you gotta work on. You know, you gotta find your balance because everyone's gonna be different too. Like some people can have, you know, a treat night once a week. Others could have it like a couple nights a week, and you know, some people it might be healthier if they only do it like once a month because having those treats might lead to a downward spiral of binging, you know? So I feel like it's just important to learn yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point to emphasize, that each person has to decide what their healthy boundaries are. You know, if there's a person that isn't a touchy-feely, huggy person, that's okay. You know, that's your boundary. Or like with food, it might be healthier at first to be more restrictive. You might have to do that. Right. And then eventually, you know, that changes. So yeah, that's a great point.
I think it's important, like you said, with the touchy-feely thing, to respect other people's boundaries.
Yes.
You know, like for me, I grew up in a touchy-feely family. Not like, actually, I guess it kind of was more like you. Like we would hug, like when we get there, like arrive, like to greet each other, and then we always hug when we leave. So I guess it's more of like a greeting and an exit. Not so much like just a random hug throughout the day. Although it's not that never happened. Like sometimes my dad would just come over and be like, just give me a hug just because, you know? But yeah, it's important to know, like for Jason, he was not like that. So you gotta, like, I have to respect his boundaries, that he's not going to want me to just hug all over him all day long. That would be like suffocating to him. Whereas
Mhm,
to me, like, it might be comforting. So that balance.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Makes
Absolutely.
sense. Yeah. I say one thing that I am working on with Leah and like teaching her and making sure everyone else is aware and knows that if Leah says no to a hug or no, maybe she doesn't want to talk to daddy right now, even though that's sad because she's busy playing, but like he knows and he's very conscious of it and he's very great at it actually. Like if she doesn't want to talk right now, that's fine because that's her boundary. And if she doesn't want to hug someone right now, that's fine because that's her boundary. So she may want to give a high five or we may get her have a fist bump or maybe she doesn't want to do anything at all and that's okay too. Like she has to understand that her no means no.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean like no means yes sometimes because it doesn't. If you say no that you don't want something, then no, you don't want it. So please don't push it on me. So
Yeah.
that's definitely a boundary that we're working on with Aaliyah and like I said, everyone else because they have to get over she doesn't want to hug me right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's like so important to teach the kids, especially because in a culture, especially that we've had recently, you know, where women's voices no doesn't always mean no, you know, it's important that they know from a young age that that's like validated, you know what I mean, that they learn those boundaries from a young age and they feel that validation, and that we teach that to boys and girls, you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think a lot of people forget that it does work both ways, you know?
Yeah.
Like so many people, I think, only think of it from the female perspective. But it can happen to a man too.
And you have to understand the word no. Like,
yeah.
You have to know that no actually means no.
Yeah. Instead of trying to fight it and push and get your way. And whatever that might be, you know?
Oh, yeah, in all aspects. Yeah, that, like, that, yeah, like I said before, that no is valid and it's okay. You know, if whether it be, no, I don't want to eat the piece of cake. Well, don't shame me because I'm not eating the piece of cake, you know?
I love that you said that, too.
Oh, yes.
Because Brittany and I can both attest to this at work. They like to bring in donuts, like, well, at the moment it's a little bit different. When we're back in the office full time, they like to bring in donuts sometimes like 2-3 times a week. And quite frankly, I don't like donuts for breakfast. I don't like sweets for breakfast. Like, it just makes me feel kind of sick. Every now and then,
unless it's like over the top, I have to try this donut.
Yeah.
Right.
Or, you know, every now and then, I might just be wanting a donut. I might, like, it just sounds really good in that moment. But if I don't want it, I hate when someone is like, oh, just eat the donut. You'll be fine.
Or one you just have half of it.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Like, that is, I'm so glad you said that because I feel like so many people shame you when you take care of yourself. You know, like if you have an appointment with yourself that, you know what, at 5 o'clock or whatever time, I work out. And then someone wants you to do something during that time and you're like, oh, well, I can do it after. Like, that's when I'm working out. It's like, you really can't just skip your workout. Or you really can't just eat the donut. You really can't eat the cake. Why is it just because you don't understand why someone wants to put their self, like their health, make that a priority? You know, it's like, why do you think you don't understand it, but that doesn't give you the right to judge and make them, you know what I'm not saying it very well, but.
No, I think you're saying it really well. Like that's a boundary, you know, setting time for yourself, having that self-care, having, you know, that those appointments with yourself or that routine or anything like that is a really important and valid boundary. And I love how you said it, you know, that people like shame you for taking care of yourself. You know, they're like, I think it's because people maybe aren't viewing it as a boundary, or maybe they're kind of maybe feeling insecure about their own boundaries or something, you know, I'm not sure.
Their boundary, like they don't want
Yeah.
to eat healthy. Like, they don't really
Yeah.
care.
Yeah,
And
it's just different,
I
so they don't
promise-
understand it.
Yeah. And I promise I'm not going to judge anyone for eating the pizza. Guess what? I want to eat the pizza sometimes too. Like, so it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there aren't people out there that judge people for living an unhealthy lifestyle. It's just, I know the three of us are not doing that,
Right.
you know? And so it's, I guess what we should be saying is don't, like, respect people's boundaries on whether they want to live a healthy lifestyle or they don't want to live a healthy lifestyle. Whether they want to go to church or they don't want to go to church, you know, like you brought up the spiritual one. Because that's a big one to touch on
Mm-hmm.
that I think is a hard one to touch on,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think another one that you said, Katie, was the social media one. And I don't think when you think social media, like having a boundary with it, I think sometimes you only think about like time, like the time that you spend on social media. Like, my boundary should be less time on social media. But honestly, when I think about social media, it's more about my boundary of comparing myself to everyone else.
Yes.
And you see someone be so perfect, but that's not real life, or like you want to be just like someone else. And you should probably have like the healthy boundaries with, honestly, like learning how to love yourself instead of comparing yourself to everyone else, or like they have that bag, I need that bag. And then it comes to shopping boundary, like, and I have a problem like online shopping. It's just so easy. So you have to learn how to set those boundaries to know you don't need everything that everyone else has, because you're not on that level yet. Like, you have to like stay on your level at that moment.
Right.
That's something I've had to really work on, that I've been very mindful about during quarantine. I feel like I've gotten so much better, which is funny because you'd think I'd be online shopping more, but it's definitely less right now, just because I've set that boundary and I'm like, no, you're sticking to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point, that it changes over time. You know, there's different times in your life.
Do what?
Yeah.
What did you say, Brittany?
Oh, I said I could touch on another boundary too. I didn't realize how many boundaries there were until Katie explained them all to us.
Honestly, I didn't really think about some of those either, or I just kind of lumped them all in, you know, to the same category.
Yeah.
I like Brittany, I like that you touched on, you know, the comparison and how comparison really is the thief of joy. And it's important to know with social media, you have that unfollow button, or on Facebook, you have that like snooze button. And it's okay to use it. If you find yourself like, maybe you really love all of the posts that this person is sharing, but for some reason, it's, even though like it's aesthetically pleasing or you want to be that someday, if it's like draining you and making you feel like you're not enough, unfollow, because your self-worth should not be determined based on anyone else. And if you are truly feeling drained on social media, start following more people that lift you up, and definitely unfollow the ones that are bringing you down. Because honestly, like Brittany said about the time thing, we probably all spend way too much time on social media.
Oh yeah.
I know.
It's so easy just to scroll.
It is.
Yeah.
And you just keep on scrolling and clicking back and forth between the different platforms. And it's easy to waste your time doing that.
I cannot tell you how many times I got hours and hours of unproductivity from TikTok. From quarantine.
Oh gosh, yes.
Like 2 more minutes. All right, I'm gonna bed in 10 more minutes. Okay, 15 more minutes.
Yep.
And then you feel like just lost in the spiral. You're like, how many have I watched now? What day is it?
I know.
Exactly.
What time is it?
Because another one just pops up and you're like, oh, that one's funny too. Or, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
boundary said Katie was the sexual boundary. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to get into like any details or anything like that. This is not about to be rated R, but mine and Will's sexual boundaries are different too.
Mhm.
So like that's something that we've had to, like Will's more experimentative, where I'm more like timid or like scared or like shy kind of. So it's kind of like compromised boundaries, making sure I don't go too
Yeah.
far on things that I don't find comfortable, I don't find,
Yeah.
I don't know, pleasing or whatever. But also
Yes.
making sure that I am giving him what I can give him, where I won't have regret or just things like that. So I think that was a good one that you said too, because I think, and probably in so many relationships, the boundary with sexual levels are very different, and it could be opposite. I mean, the guy could be more timid and the girl be woohoo and crazy, like.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah, and that's why it's so important to know what your boundaries are, and then work with your partner to like make sure that those are respected, and that both are respected, and yeah.
Then you communicate them to each other.
Right. You have to know them to be able to communicate. Yeah. Well, Brittany just gave a little preview for our sex episode that will be coming up at some point.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So we've talked a lot about boundaries, and Jessica made a good point about ways to enforce boundaries on social media. So, about by snoozing or unfollowing, those are ways that you're like enforcing your boundaries. Those are ways that you're making sure that you're creating a healthy boundary for yourself. Once you know what's too much, what you want more of, then you find ways to set those. So we'd really love to hear from you all this week, to comment, on this below, and really share with us, some ways that you're practicing healthy boundaries, some ways that you've maybe been challenged with boundaries during this time recently, or just any of your thoughts about boundaries. So share it with us below.
Yeah. So you guys, thanks so much for listening and always supporting us. We really appreciate it. Make sure you follow us on our social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Cheers to the Next Chapter. And then if you ever want to do it anonymous or just don't want to share it on social media, we have an email that you can send suggestions to, or just personal information that you maybe want help with. And that is cheerstothenextchapter3@gmail.com. You guys have a great week.
Yes.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.